There is one entrance to college and there is another entrance towards corporates. So just take a step back and think, why should you get that seat in a B school?
Right.
And we know the reality is no, not everyone will get. So do you deserve that seat in the B school or in your college, and what have you done for it? I was one of the very last people to get my internship, and it was not a very big sort of internship. I ended up doing my internship in a startup. So even if I feel okay, it's time and I think something is interesting within the organization, I would look first within and not really move outside. I know people have this thing that okay, if you move internally you might not get that much of increment or hike, but that's okay.
So here we are with another interesting video for you today. I have somebody from IMT Nagpur who could not meet us in the campus because she has some commitments, and here we have gotten her in Bombay. Anupama, thank you very much for joining us today. Excited to know your journey from IMT Nagpur to JP Morgan Chase where you are today, and welcome to Inside IIM.
Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to to have that flashback to think about my time at IMT Nagpur. So yes, I'm glad that I'm here.
Definitely. Anupama, we will definitely go into the flashback of IMT Nagpur, but before that, let's give a little more flashback from your early days, from your life. Where exactly do you come from? What have you done in life that made you really believe or made you feel that you needed an MBA degree?
Yes, it's been quite a journey, I would say. I wouldn't have to say that everything was well thought out all at once. So it's been a journey. I was born and brought up in Bihar, and I had my primary education there. About IMT Nagpur, the one thing really stood out for me was their dual specialization. When I got to see they have this sort of offering where I can choose maybe after a year and have the kind of flavor of both the streams. And I read about professors, their experience, their industrial experience for that matter. So I thought it would be a good place to join.
IMT Nagpur undoubtedly is one of the most beautiful campuses that you might experience. The kind of trees that are there, the kind of flowers that bloom, the kind of the overall vibe that you get once you enter this particular campus. So what was your reaction for the first time when you walked in, and what sort of memories come to your mind?
So yes, the lush green campus is one of the things, right? It gives you that soothing environment, that freshness, I would say. This was one thing very clear in my mind. I would not all be academic focused. That was my personal take when I was entering into the MBA, because in the Indian education system we all had this very traditional rigid sort of curriculum in 10th, 12th, and even for my college that matter was a complete classroom kind of setup. So at IMT, and this was probably, I knew that this is the highest education, the postgraduate I'm doing. Maybe after that I won't get to study full time. So I just wanted to have it all, to be honest. I just wanted to make the max use of everything that was available to me. So I did that, and yes, and I was very proudly, I can say that I was the part of placement committee.
Sometimes people say that people who are part of the placement committees, they end up with the best sort of opportunities. How true is this statement according to you? Would you like to bust this myth? How hard did you work for the others as well in the campus, and what was the first opportunity that you get?
I wouldn't completely agree to it, because I know that there has always been this perspective about the placement committee members, and it's not for my college. I know it's for all the colleges. As soon as you are stepping into that committee, the badge, the students, they start looking at you differently, and it's not very good. But then we focused on what is important. In terms of opportunities, I would say there is no biasness at all that get to placements first or you get to internships first. No, not at all. You are not always the first person to get placed. I was one of the very last people to get my internship, and it was not a very big sort of internship. I ended up doing my internship in a startup. So that was it. But then how it reversed, I worked hard towards my placement because I knew the thing I had faced for internship. Then after coming back from my internship for my second year, I really worked hard, and then by God's grace, the placement then I got for the final placement, that was the day one placement. And people will always have something to say, and then there was a lot of questions when I got placed on day one, but that's what is.
And what was that placement on day one? Where did you, land up? Let's talk about that dates.
I was selected for CRISIL, and with me, I think around 6 of us, we got placed with CRISIL that day. So it was a wonderful time.
If I'm not wrong, you were working as a credit analyst at CRISIL. What sort of a role does one get immediately after they get picked up from a B school like IMT Nagpur? What sort of responsibilities are you entrusted with? Is it intimidating? Is it does it put a lot of pressure and challenge to you in the very first year?
With CRISIL, I was very fortunate to have got a very good core finance profile where most of the finance students or all of the finance students aspire for. The profile CRISIL offered was a very good core finance profile, but they select a bunch of students, but you do not know until you get that joining call of yours, that which department, which profile. So I think broadly in finance, I would say there are n number of profiles, but broadly it's equity or credit. I think we mainly were hired for the global markets of CRISIL. So CRISIL is one of the largest and first credit rating agency of India, and they have this huge domestic market presence, but the sort of profile we got to campus was international market. And if you know, S&P Global Ratings is the largest rating agency globally, and it is the parent company of CRISIL. I personally worked for that department, which is called the Global Analytical Center, and it caters to S&P Global. And so I worked with tracking credits and credit ratings for the European market for S&P Global.
You must have had your share of experiences as well in the first, second years that you have spent in that particular company. What comes to your mind if I tell you, tell me a little bit about those 2 years, 3 years that you've spent there? What sort of stories stayed with you?
When I entered CRISIL, I was still in that student mindset, I'm a student, someone has to train me, someone has to tell me what to do. That 2-3 years are challenging, and I was on my toes, completely I was on my toes, because there were things which came easy, but there were things which came difficult, like we have complex financial models and complex Excel. So you have to really get your head around those things, and there are suddenly you're working with someone not from your country. It's a different culture when you're working with global markets, when you're working with US or European counterparts, and then you need to match their expectations, their level of intellect, their level of understanding, and just the culture aspect of it. And the other thing is the time management, right? The time difference. We start a bit late to match their timings and finish late. So all those sort of things, I've spent like my midnights sometimes in CRISIL.
Where do you draw this line when you see that, I will work for these XYZ years in the field where I'm working right now, and then I will prioritize my life over work?
Yeah, I mean, this has been always a sort of thing, especially with corporate jobs, and you get those titles, that lucrative titles of investment banking, investment bankers, and the paychecks follow, as you rightly said. But yes, work-life balance has been a thing, and it's personally for me, it has always been very important. I'm okay with having a bit of less CTC to start with, but I will go for that option. So I think that was one of the other major factors which for that I had applied in CRISIL. And to be honest, CRISIL offers you a good work-life balance. But another thing, I focused on learning. When you are starting day one, you can't just keep thinking about work-life balance, because you have to give, I believe personally, you have to give that at least initial amount of years, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever, depending on a person's journey. You have to get at least starting, you have to, I would say, grill hard. Then you reach a certain level and get comfortable, because you know your stuff, you know your industry, and then it comes naturally. Yes, it's challenging and it's demanding, I would say, but it is you who can take that call to draw a line.
Moving on, Anupama, tell me a little bit about your decision of shifting from CRISIL. What was that time when you thought that you have had enough of learning from this particular place and you want to explore more? And how did JP Morgan actually happen to you? Was it a chanced opportunity, or was it like a prepared sort of a step that you have taken in life?
Yeah, that would be interesting. So in CRISIL, I've changed actually two roles within CRISIL. I started with S&P Global Ratings, as I said, and I was covering a bit of sectors there. I got seasoned there in covering those sectors, covering those ratings, and then I thought, okay, maybe within credit, so I would do something else. And CRISIL has also this mobility option. So I switched to a department called Global Research and Analytics within CRISIL, and it caters to as support function to the large investment banks. So I was working for one of our clients in a support role to the investment banks and providing their credit reviews for their corporates, large corporates clients. So it was overall credit, but it was shifting from credit ratings to a credit research kind of role. I got a call from JP Morgan directly from their careers page, like I would have applied somewhere, not through any consultant or anyone in between. So I got this call, I understood about the role, and they have recently set up their department, which is not a support role. It is at par with their US and the European credit officer role. So I thought, okay, good to shift to a more kind of front end role from a support role into a credit risk function, and that's how.
How important do you think a B school degree like an MBA matters? In your opinion, how has that structured your life, and what has it helped you do more if you look back for 3, 4, 5 years?
Again, going back to the Indian kind of education system we had, I thought getting to the corporate, the MBA was one of the fastest route and is still today. I would say it depends, like, are you making that value add? Are you making that difference? So there is one entrance to college and there is another entrance towards corporates. So just take a step back and think, why should you get that seat in a B school?
Right.
And we know the reality is no, not everyone will get. So do you deserve that seat in the school, in the B school or in your college, and what have you done for it, and what kind of difference you are making?
Now let me ask you, how happy are you in the kind of role that you are in? How do you see yourself moving forward from here in the world of JPMC or any other organization for that matter?
One thing that's always been a factor for me and always been a priority for me was the learning. As long as I'm learning somewhere, I don't think of changing. One of the things. The other thing is work-life balance, as we said about culture. JPM has a very good culture and it is giving me a balance. And as I said, the hybrid work model, we go 3 days and I have 2 days at home working from home, and I am working from office 3 days. But that is also sort of very flexible around it. The organizations have become flexible that if I want any other day to work from home, and if I want, I can go still 5 days a week, and next week full I can work from office. So all those kind of, the flexibilities around it. They have a very good HR policies, the transportation, they take care of you like really as an employee and as a part of the family and organization. So you feel heard, you feel cared for. So all those things are also very important. So even if I feel okay, it's time and I think something is interesting within the organization, I would look first within and not really move outside. I know people have this thing that okay, if you move internally you might not get that much of increment or hike, but that's okay. Like if it's something of your interest and something of your passion and the organization has to offer, why not?
Lovely. Before we let you go, Anupama, one last piece of advice that you have for students who are looking at this particular conversation, who are at the crossroads probably thinking about whether to go for an MBA or do a master's degree and get into the corporate world or not, and in general, anything that you want to leave them with as a life lesson that you have learned?
I would just say analyze your skills, like there is a SWOT analysis we do, and analyze yourself. You are the best judge of yourself, what kind of strengths or what kind of weaknesses you have. Then you have this conscious thought process around it. You need to work on, and what you need to, some of the strengths you already have, so you need to build on that. Some of the weaknesses you have, you need to work on that. On the softer skills part of it, what I have learned, just stay humble. Humility is one of the greatest virtue, and that thing is not just that saying has not been made like that. And I've realized, stay humble. No matter how much you reach, where you start from and where you go. Humility is something which will take you the farthest.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Anupama, for your time. I'm not going to hold you back anymore. I know you have your own commitment, but thanks very much for being so candid to us, and look back at your college days, campus days, looking back at your early days of working with an organization, and summing it up very beautifully by saying that you need to be humble, and that something is probably going to stay with you forever, that you were working in this particular corporate world. So thank you once again for talking to us, for sharing your story and giving us insights about your life. If you have learned something, do tell us in the comments below what you liked about this particular video. If you have any questions that you want to ask Anupama, do share that as well in the comment section. If you want to know more about the institute that Anupama is part of, there is a link in the description. Go check that out, and tell us in the comments how we can make this particular conversations a bit better for you. Thank you once again,
Thank you.
Anupama.
Thank
Have
you
a
for
great
having
life
me.
and have a great day.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.